Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode on the channel. Today I will be changing the thermal paste and fan on my Asus notebook. It's a 14-inch notebook. It's the series UX430U Zenbook. And it has been a pretty nice machine, but ever since day one, the fan has not worked correctly. It'll spin and then it will stop and the computer gets really hot and the whole bottom of the case is made out of metal. So it conducts the heat onto my lap, which is not good in classes. So I have been getting some thermal throttling happening with this computer, and I just wanted to fix the problem once and for all. So the first thing I did was I ordered a new fan off of AliExpress because that's the only place where these fans are available for this type of laptop. I did check Amazon first, but it wasn't available on the Canadian Amazon website. So to start changing the fan and the thermal paste, I took all the screws off the bottom of the PC. So this PC cover is held in with many different types of screws. It has the little tiny star-shaped screws on the outside, and the two back feet have to be removed in order for you to see the two extra screws holding in the back of the case. The first time I went to go take off this case, I didn't realize that there was two screws underneath the bottom 2 feet at the very back, and I tried to pry it open, but it didn't work very well. So these 2 feet are just held down with sticky, double-sided tape kind of almost. It's like a double-sided tape. It's not really a double-sided tape, it's more like a glue. To get them off, I had to use a knife. I tried to use a screwdriver at first, but it just wasn't enough leverage to get them off. I have had them off before, and I have re-glued them down, so that's why they were more stuck than the factory would have it stuck down. So after those are out, you have to remove 2 screws that are holding in the bottom of the case. So on the inside of the PC, you can see where the fan is. It's in a relatively good position to remove. I had a little bit of trouble removing the power cord for the fan. I ended ripping one of the wires off of the actual power cord for this fan. So this fan was no longer usable after taking it out of the PC. I did turn it on off of camera while the PC was open. And what was happening was the fan wasn't actually spinning. It was trying to spin and would move just slightly and then stop. And the heat pipe was getting extremely hot. So I thought it would be a good idea to change the thermal paste since I have everything open anyways. So once I got the power plug for the fan removed, I went ahead and I had to remove the Wi-Fi cables that go around the top of the fan, and I also had to remove a couple of the display cables and other accessories that go to the screen. So to remove these cables, it's kind of like an up and a down pattern around the fan, and to take them off, you just work your way slowly around, moving the cables up and down. You could take out the Wi-Fi cables totally by unclipping them from the chip, but I didn't feel like this was necessary for what I was doing. So I have tried to repair this fan in the past. I did spray some oil into the fan. It actually made it work for quite a bit before it actually totally stopped working, and it was a small improvement, but after a while it just kind of gave up and there was no fixing it from that point forwards. So once I removed the fan, I had to find the serial number which was on the back, and I just had to make sure that it was the correct fan that I was ordering on Amazon. So the video does cut to me at a future date. I did try to clean some of the oil that I did spray onto this fan off of the board just because it was all over the place from the fan spinning, and I just used simple rubbing alcohol. I use 99.9% rubbing alcohol in this video just to clean any components that will have power to them. When you're doing something like this, you don't really have to remove the battery. It is a good idea to remove it just as a precautionary measure if you feel like you're going to touch something that might short something in the board, but all I was touching was the fan and the copper pipe, and this is a pretty small laptop, so the battery is not too big, so I wasn't too worried about it. So in this image here, you can see this is the original fan. I was just taking it out of the bag just to make sure I knew how the new one was going to go in. So the new one came from AliExpress in about 2 to 3 weeks. It was actually quite fast for the shipping. It came really nicely packaged in bubble wrap, and you can see me unwrapping this now. It's the exact same fan actually that came with the computer originally. This sticker that you see, the green sticker, originally was on the fan, but I had to take that off because I did oil it once or twice just to get a little bit more lubrication in the fan because it was scratching a bit. So before I reinstalled the fan, I actually took off the copper heat pipe because the fan actually sits underneath the copper heat pipe. And since I was changing the thermal paste anyways, it's easier to take the heat pipe off before installing the fan. So you can see that there was quite a bit of thermal paste on the inside of the heat pipe and touching the CPU. This is not a GPU unit. This one does not have dedicated graphics. It just has an Intel i7 CPU in it with 512 gigabytes of RAM. To remove the old thermal paste, I use 99.9% rubbing alcohol and paper towels. I have seen some other YouTubers that use Q-tips to remove the thermal paste from the copper heat sinks. But I found that paper towels seem to absorb a little bit more than a Q-tip, and you're using a lot of Q-tips to try and remove all this thermal paste. So once I had both of the areas relatively clean, I couldn't get all of the thermal paste off of there because it did get extremely hot, and the computer, I guess, kind of melted the thermal paste a little bit. It was really, really thick, and it was very hard like a rock on the green part of the CPU. So I did my best to try and get everything off without scratching it too much. I didn't want to go too deep because I didn't want to hurt something inside of the circuitry. So after it was relatively clean, as you can see, the shiny part on the CPU is really, really clean. I went ahead and I unboxed my fan and temporarily put it into place. You can put the cables in before you do the screwing, or you can put them in after, around the outside of the fan. I found it was easier if you kind of try to install the cables around the outside of the fan before you actually screw it down, because you can lift up the fan and maneuver it a little bit better to try and install the cables how they were from the factory. So to reinstall the thermal paste, I ended up just putting 2 beads on the 2 metallic sections of the CPU. I went a little bit overkill on the thermal paste. You probably shouldn't put this much thermal paste if you're doing it for a different project, but I put this much just because the heat pipe is really small and I want the most contact with the CPU as possible, even if it's off of the metallic surface. As you can see, the heat pipe is slightly bigger than the actual CPU pad, which is good. So this means that there will be contact all the way around. It wasn't so much thermal paste that it was oozing onto the circuit board. I made sure as I was screwing it down and after fully screwed that it did not seep onto the green portion of the board. So once this was done, I installed the screws in a cross-shaped pattern, just like installing a car tire. So that way the thermal paste leveled out nicely on the inside between the copper heat pipe and the CPU. After the heat pipe was installed, I ensured that there was no goop around the edges. As you can see, I lifted up the black flap, and then I went to go install the screws for my fan. Unfortunately, I did lose one of the screws for my fan, so I ended up having to use one of the extra screws that I saved from a previous project, which is really important if you're doing something like this. So once those 2 things were installed, you can check to make sure your PC powers on, but I knew that it was going to power on because all I was changing was the fan and I plugged it in and it was very snug. So you can go ahead and reassemble your laptop. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below. If you're struggling to figure out how to do something, if you're opening a different type of laptop or even this laptop. So if you like this video, press that like button down below. If you're new here, please subscribe. Thanks for watching this video, and if you want to see others like it, come back and visit the channel. Thanks for watching.